The Lost Battalion. A story about an entire battalion that got trapped by the German army for 6 days back in 1918 during the First World War. I'm not going to get into the details of the whole war or who exactly won, since there's plenty of material out there on that. I just want to talk about a specific event that went down in history as the Battle of the Argonne Forest. As most know, the Allies, the US, Britain, and France, eventually won, while the Central Powers, including Germany, lost. This is just one of the toughest, most brutal situations soldiers had to face in the trenches of France, and it's remembered for how intense it really was. Before we get to the battle itself, you have to look at the guy in charge. Charles Whittlesey. He was born in early 1884 in the US and was a sharp guy, a lawyer working in New York. When World War I kicked off, he decided to enlist in 1917 and eventually ended up as a major commanding the 308th Infantry Regiment of the 77th Division. So, in October 1918, the Allies were planning a push to break through the German lines in the Argonne Forest. The plan was supposed to be a coordinated effort with three fronts: French troops on one side, American troops on the other, and Whittlesey's 77th Division in the middle. It was supposed to be a solid plan to push the Germans back. But things went wrong. Because of a total breakdown in coordination between the French and the American units, Whittlesey pushed forward too far. He ended up way out in front of the Allied lines, deep into German-held territory, without realizing it. Suddenly, he and his 550 men were sitting in a ravine, completely surrounded by the German army. Think of it this way: the dense forest and rough terrain made communication almost impossible. Whittlesey's unit had pushed past the front line, putting them in a dead zone. They were trapped in a valley with German forces on every side, front, back, left, and right. They didn't have much of a choice other than to dig in and fight. They ended up stuck there for 5 days. Day 1, October 2nd. Whittlesey's battalion pushed forward as planned, but the units on their flanks didn't move up with them. They were left exposed. The Germans quickly cut their communication lines. Anyone they sent back to report their position, a runner or otherwise, would usually get taken out. Day 2. The Germans started hammering the ravine with mortar and artillery fire. Whittlesey tried to signal headquarters, but it was no use. The guys were dying, water was almost gone, and food was non-existent. Whittlesey told his men to dig in and hold their ground. Day 3. This was the worst part. The Americans actually started shelling their own men because of a mix-up with the coordinates from a carrier pigeon message. Whittlesey had to use his last pigeon, Cher Ami, to get a message out. He wrote something like, "For heaven's sake, stop firing. We're your own men." The pigeon got hit by gunfire on the way but somehow made it to headquarters, and the shelling stopped. Day 4. Things were grim. No food, no ammo, and the men were so thirsty they were drinking muddy water from the trenches. The Germans tried to get them to surrender, sending a captured American soldier over with a message saying, "No one is coming for you, just give up." Whittlesey basically told them no way. Day 5. The German shelling got even worse. Of the 550 guys who started, only about 190 were still able to fight. They managed to fend off a few more attacks, and that evening, an American scout plane finally spotted them and dropped some supplies, though the Germans grabbed a good chunk of them. Finally, on the 6th day, the Allied lines pushed through and rescued the survivors. When they got to the ravine, they found over 100 dead and about 190 guys who were wounded and couldn't keep fighting. Whittlesey refused to leave until every one of his men was out. He became a symbol of courage and was awarded the Medal of Honor for it. He went back to New York and returned to law, but the war took a heavy toll on him. Like many who came back from the trenches, he struggled with what he'd seen. A few years later, feeling guilty about the men he lost and the decisions he made, he ended up committing suicide by jumping off a ship. He just kind of vanished from the public eye.